What's up? Ghost Fictions is here, and we're back again. This is the second part of a story where DxD universe reacts to betrayed Villain-Issei. But before we start, please consider subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Don't forget to check the description for more information. Now, let's get into part 2. Before we begin, there are some people I would like to bring here. RageRevan snapped his fingers, bringing in several guests that were surprised to see themselves here. The factions immediately recognized who the people were in front of them. They were the Sikvara Ager's peerage and the Sayerg Bale's peerage, along with Griselda Quarta, Riser Phoenix and his peerage, and finally Tauji and Mina Shidu, who were Irina's parents, all of whom were stunned to see themselves here. They all looked at the one who summoned them. Welcome, Ager's peerage and Bale peerage, to my humble theater. I have brought you all for a viewing. Who are you, and why did you bring us here? The one who spoke seriously was Sikvara herself. She was busy doing some paperwork in her place. She was now in a movie theater of all places, as her queen came forwards and put his hand before him. This was Olivian, who spoke. Stand back, my king. He is not someone you want to mess with. He could be an enemy. The Bale peerage was also nervous, with Laban and Regulus getting into a protective stance in front of their kings. Griselda and Tauji were also on guard, along with Riser's peerage, all of whom were in their defensive stances. As Sayerg spoke, no worries, I can handle myself. He also looked at RageRevan, who shook his head and spoke, I am not your enemy, and you can see some familiar people in the crowd. RageRevan pointed towards the guests as they recognized several of the faction leaders that were also present. The people soon calmed down and realized this, as Riser then asked. Can you please tell Riser why did you bring us here? RageRevan then explained as he spoke, Patience Riser, my name is RageRevan, and I am here to show you about the multiverse of your pillar, or I should say former pillar Issei Hyoudou. The revelation stunned everyone present. The multiverse is real, and if so, then what reality are they going to see? Now before you get seated, here is what you need to know. RageRevan snapped his fingers, and their memories started to click inside of their heads, and many had looks of horror and sadness in their eyes, as some of the newer guests were not happy with what the girls did. Ravel, why did you do that behind Hydu's back? Ravel looked away. She thought it would be a good idea to take a break and date Ryu, but it failed miserably. Ravel never felt like it. What was between her and Issei was a spark, but there was no such spark between her and Ravel. Irina felt something similar as well. Even Tauji and Mina were curious, how did this even happen? Answer Riser spoke with a bit of a raised tone as Ravel responded, I wanted to take a break from Issei for a while, I am sorry. Riser frowned upon this as he looked away in sadness, knowing what his little sister did. Yubulena consoled him, while his peerage looked in sadness. Tauji then asked, did you do the same as Ravel, Irina? Yes, Dad, Tauji sighed in sadness as Mina looked at her, and spoke with sadness, how could you do this, especially behind his back Irina? You should have told him, Irina, he would have understood it, and accepted you wanted to have a break. Irina looked at her father and responded, I am sorry Dad, I just was not sure how he would take it. Tauji shook his head and responded, we will continue our discussion later on, there is nothing that can be done, just hope that he does not have malicious intent. Tauji spoke as he took a seat near Irina along with Mina, while Riser and his peerage took a seat somewhere a bit far away from Ria's and her peerage. Meanwhile Griselda was speaking to Zenobia along with the Bale and Ager's peerage, all of whom had angered looks on their faces. Griselda then spoke angrily. You betrayed him, behind his back, I have no words, this is not how I raised you. Zenobia looked away in response, as Griselda spoke, on the bright side, you did not sell yourself to him, but on a serious note, why couldn't any of you just break up with him, if you did not want to be with him? Indeed, even I would like to know, Sikvara added. She heard about Issei and highly respected him, she felt bad for what happened to him. The girls had no answer as Sayerg spoke. You know I respect Hyoudou Issei a lot, he is a warrior and a good friend, I will be forever grateful to him, but if you don't value him, then I see no value in you. Sayerg walked away with his peerage as he continued, just a reminder, you would not have been as successful as you were if Issei Hyoudou was not here, Riaz. Sayerg's voice was cold, he was absolutely angered and disappointed in Riaz for her actions. Riaz looked down, tears falling from her eyes, as Surziches sighed. He was not aware of Riaz's actions, until it was too late. The good thing was that RageRevan brought them here, before things could potentially become from bad to worse. Sayerg is right, you should be ashamed of yourself Sikvara, and her peerage walked away as she asked RageRevan with a bit of concern, how is Issei, right now? He is fine and getting the help needed, trained under some of the strongest Isseis in the multiverse, but until then, you all will be watching this. Sikvara nodded in understanding as she walked with her peerage. Griselda then spoke sadly. I blame myself for failing you Zenobia, it is all my fault, had I raised you better this wouldn't have happened. Zenobia started to cry when she heard this, as Sikvara spoke to her, please don't blame yourself for your ward's mistake, she is old enough to make her choices. Griselda looked at her and nodded, she sat beside Gabriel who was calming her down for what had happened. They were now worried due to Issei turning against them completely because of this. After Issei left and headed back to his house, the faction leaders were in a rocky situation. They needed information from Issei, and he was nowhere to be found. He had just disappeared. I wanted to teach Issei a lesson, but there was no Issei. He wanted to beat the truth out from Issei, but without him, there was no way to do so. He gritted his teeth in anger and accepted defeat. 2 days had passed since he was gone. Nobody knew where he went. It was like the earth swallowed him up. If he did beat up Issei, I will be the one to beat him up, Mary spoke coldly, as some of the guests agrees with her words, while Ryu shivered. His older sister almost hates his counterpart, not that he could blame her or anything. However, things only had gotten worse later on, as Malak once again attacked. He had attacked the factions with a much greater force, leaving more casualties. He was laying waste to the factions wherever he went. Nobody could find a way to stop him so far. This left a bitter taste in his mouth. The factions and the newer guests looked down in sadness, knowing that this Issei was not the same person that they knew. They were angered by how they treated this iteration of Issei. They were additionally worried on how he would react. The girls that betrayed Issei were starting to feel dread due to his actions. Issei had come back from his visit, as he was not in a mood to deal with any of his family members. He was working on the final touches of the Mortis Blade, the god-slaying sacred gear. It was almost done, when his door suddenly exploded. What the Issei exclaimed in surprise. He saw the door was exploded by none other than a voluptuous black-haired beauty. Issei was not happy seeing her, however. He closed the book and it disappeared. Akeno was shocked seeing herself being the one that attacked him. She was worried on what Issei intends to do with her. Some of the guests were seething in anger looking at Akeno's counterpart. There is something called as knocking, Himejima. Issei shouted. He was ready to teach her a lesson, but all he saw was Akeno smiling towards him. Oh, that is just punishment for insulting my Anata. It's gonna get a whole lot worse for you. Fu Akeno spoke with a sweet smile, as lightning crackled between her palms and fingers. Oh please, like you can even lay a dent on Issei let alone punish him, Mary taunted Akeno, who was shivering. She knew that this Issei won't hesitate to put her down. As RageRevan spoke, this is going to be a mistake that will haunt you for the entirety of the viewing. Akeno was even more fearful as her peerage. Suzaku and Betrayal were worried on what Issei will do to her, even as Isay seemed to be a bit concerned on what will happen. Regardless, if she does anything this would be brought on her own actions. Akeno may have the same smile, however she was internally furious. Nobody insults her darling and gets away with it. Issei, on the other hand, was not the same Issei that would normally take beating from someone like her, as he spoke with a growl. Don't blame me for what happens next then. Unbeknownst to Akeno, Issei's eyes had turned red. He was ready to leave a scar on her, to deal with her once and for all. He had a sinister grin. Akeno was pale seeing the grin. Several of the audience were also fearful, which included the children like Kunu and Milikas, seeing Issei's sinister grin. Mama, I am scared. Kunu spoke with fear as Yusaka consoled her, while being worried for this Issei. His ruthlessness even scared the likes of her. Grafia did the same for her son, while trying her best to recover that he almost tried to kill her. It's okay, Milikas, he can't harm us. RageRevan looked at them and smiled internally. They don't even know the concept is in the theater, and he will be joining them soon. The scene changes to Akeno, who came outside the room with a lost look on her face. She walked aimlessly towards the couch as she slumped on it, with a lifeless look on her face. Akeno shivered seeing her state, while Betrayal shouted in response, what the hell did he do to her? Answer me. RageRevan, however, before he could do anything, RageRevan floated on top of him. His menacing presence terrified the cadre as he spoke. I would warn you to watch your tone, Betrayal. If you don't, I will send you straight to this Issei. He will be more than happy to discipline you. Betrayal shivered in fear, along with the rest of the faction leaders. RageRevan was terrifying when angry, and that was something he made very clear. He far eclipsed even the dragon gods, and that was something they should know. I apologize on his behalf. RageRevan looked at Shemhazai, who had apologized for his actions. It was out of fear and guilt, as RageRevan spoke with pausing the viewing. Just don't do it again. It's not often for me to lose my cool, but your daughter's counterpart literally tried to attack Issei for being aggressive to die word. Of advice, keep your daughter in check, otherwise your Issei may do the same to your daughter as well. RageRevan walked away as Betrayal nodded in understanding. Not only did Akeno betray Issei, he even had the gall to defend the counterpart that nearly tried to kill Issei, and he only defended himself. He was guilty for what he had done. He replayed the viewing, as the audience saw what Issei did to Akeno. Many were confused and horrified at what Issei had done to Akeno, confused as to what Issei did to Akeno, and while horrified seeing her state in which she is in. Akeno sat on the couch. Whatever Issei did to her traumatized her. She saw Issei Hyoudou passing by. She spoke. Akeno spoke weakly, trying to garner his attention. Not now, Akeno, I have some work to do. Issei spoke. However, when he saw Akeno in this state, he shouted in worry. Akeno. What happened? Dai exclaimed as he rushed to Akeno. He did not know what to do. Akeno failed to respond, as Dai assumed that this was Malak's doing. If only he knew Penemu spoke with dread and anger, knowing it was Issei that did this. However, Revan had a smirk, knowing who really Malak was. Out of all the girls, Akeno was the most emotionally dependent on Dai, but Dai did not know what to do. He had no choice but to call the other girls to leave, since he had to do a lot of work. The other girls deduced that this was Malak's doing. His attacks have become more and more aggressive in just 2 days. If anything, they believed that this just the beginning, and the fact that he managed to sneak in here showed how dangerous he is, making them fear him. If this was Issei, he would do anything to stay by her side till she is okay. Revan spoke seriously, as he looked at Akeno, who now started to have tears in her eyes, knowing this was true. She saw how shallow Dai really was. You are right, she is a fool to have traded a diamond gem for a copper item. It is really disappointing. Mary agreed with Revan's statements, as many of those that sat beside her like Yasaka, Valerie and her team, Ingvold and Azazel, along with Team Slashdog, who had to agree with Mary's words. She made a huge mistake and this was the consequence, while her loved ones were consoling Akeno for her loss. Despite this, the fear of dealing with Malak was something that terrified even them as well. He was able to sneak into the home of several members of Team DxD, and that alone made several fear him. The scene changes to Ingvold looked at her condition and sadness. She had been slipping into deep slumbers over and over again. The past few days, she assumed that her sickness had gone due to the medicine that Dai gave her. However, in reality, it was Issei that made the medicine. How is this possible? Ingvold spoke with worry and fear. Ingvold noticed that her illness returning was not a good sign. She had approached Dai multiple times, but he ignored her. This caused her great sadness and depression. Ingvold looked at her counterpart with anger. Issei did so much for her, and yet this was how her counterpart treated her. She wanted to choke her counterpart with all of her might. Mary calmed her down, assuring that she was not at fault, while also being angry at Dai and this version of Ingvold. Oh, that reminds me. Revan paused the viewing and generated an orb which went to Ingvold's body, as Mary asked in concern, "What did you do?" She still had some remains of the sleeping sickness disease, in case it ever comes back. This is a medicine that would cure and prevent it from ever manifesting in your body. Ingvold looked at herself, as Mary asked, "How are you feeling?" Ingvold looked at her and responded, "I feel much better." Mary was surprised by this as he spoke. "Just be careful. Your sacred gear and your blood as a leviathan will be used by the devils to reproduce more people. I would advise you to keep distance from them." Ingvold looked at him in shock. There was no way she was going to be separated from her eyes. She never knew that the devils saw her as such. "We would never." Revan and Ingvold looked at the one who spoke, and it was Serafal. She soon apologized for her rudeness as she continued, "We would never do that to Ingvold-chan. She will not become a breeding program for us." "You wouldn't, but they would. A certain faction amongst you will." Revan spoke as the four Satans, and even Sayard Bale and his peerage understood what Revan meant. As they nodded in agreement, Ingvold then spoke. "I will keep my distance." Ingvold spoke while keeping herself close as this stunned the devils present. However, they understood this. It was not enough that Issei had left them. But Ingvold did so as well. "And I will be protecting her. She is like my little sister after all." Mary spoke in agreement, as Ingvold smiled in response. As Revan replayed the viewing, Ingvold leaving them was a massive blow as well. However, she only left the devils, not the factions like Issei did. Maybe there is still hope. Furthermore, her illness reduced her magic power significantly, which almost would make her even more weak than she already is. "Why Dai, why are you ignoring me?" Ingvold murmured with sadness. She wanted Dai's support more than ever. But every time she approached him, he ignored him, making excuses of either training or preparing for another meeting. Ingvold left the room. She was worried that her sickness would return. She wanted to go for a walk to refresh her mind. If only she knew what kind of a person Dai was. Yasaka muttered with sadness and anger. Seeing Ingvold's anger in her eyes, she couldn't blame her for being angry with her counterpart, which Yasaka was as well. Ingvold had heard someone from upstairs talking to someone. As she looked, she heard more noise. "Yeah, the Mortis blade needs some work. After that, even the gods will not be a problem for me to deal with." The person spoke in a calm voice. "Issei?" Ingvold spoke in a surprised tone. She wondered what Issei was talking about, and against her better judgment, she headed up there. Little did she know that her visit to the top will prove to be a wake-up call for her. "I hope she realizes what she has done." Ingvold spoke with utter disdain for her counterpart. A part of her believed that this Issei should never forgive Ingvold no matter what happens. Valerie and the others calmed her down. Her fury was something that she was well aware of, and knew that she needed to be calmed down if she needed to deal with what comes next. "Now this scene will change your mindsets of what Issei's mentality is like." Revan spoke seriously, as the audience wondered what Revan meant. He already had shown aggression at the very first chapter, but now what is going to happen? Ingvold reached the roof, where she saw Issei talking to a cloaked man. She wondered what he was talking about. Ever since the Malax attack, many had wanted to talk to Isay in order to convince him to help, but every time, he was either missing or never showed up. She wondered, what is he doing here, or who is he talking to? Indeed, after that we will be unstoppable. No god or devil will be able to touch us, the figure spoke with a smile. Ingvold was shocked and horrified. Who was Isay talking to? Even then, it's a shame that the factions are in a toss. I mean, they have no way of dealing with the current threat. Issei spoke in a mocking tone. Wait, who is Issei talking to? Mickey asked with concern. She did not like who this person was in front of her, as RageRevan spoke. You are in for a huge surprise, all of you. The audience shuddered at this revelation, as they had a bad feeling of what is going to happen. Issei is also shown to be power hungry, and with a fraud as a pillar, the factions are going on a downward spiral. Not to mention, their hero is nothing but a poser and a liar. It is a shame that the factions are fools, and their leaders are nothing but prideful idiots. The cloaked man spoke with a mocking tone. This irritated and angered Ingvold as she thought. Who the hell is he? Ingvold thought, angered as they insulted her lover and the rest of the factions. I guess, but then again, the factions are not my problem. They can do whatever they want, whenever they want. Issei spoke in a cold tone, not caring for the factions anymore. His voice was as cold as nitrogen ice, with no warmth or emotion at all. Geez, never knew Hyoudou can get this cold, Biku spoke with a shudder as Arthur responded in agreement. Parental upbringing plays a very important role in who you become. Since this Issei has suffered for a very long time, it is no wonder he is so aggressive. Arthur spoke as LeFay added with a fearful tone. I have to agree, although I am concerned on what Issei has planned for us. That is something I think we will be seeing relatively soon, Arthur spoke while calming his sister down. He could only hope that his counterpart is given some mercy. Ingvold was surprised by this. She had never seen Issei speak in such a cold manner. Every time Issei spoke to her, it was in a calm and warm manner, but she was cold to him, thinking that he was a liar. Speaking of which, what more sacred gears are you planning to recreate? The man asked with interest, wondering what Issei was thinking. I am planning to recreate the true Longinus. Once the Mortis blade is done, Cao will never be able to use the full potential of the sacred gear, due to God's will limiting the spear's capabilities. I can't blame him for that, and besides, even his other balance breaker, Polar Knight Chakravartin, is pretty capable. Issei spoke while rubbing his chin. His tone was in complete analysis of the gear. That's true, I mean, you did manage to defeat him even before finding the book, that is, but then again, your brother as always took credit for what you did, right? The man spoke with a slight sadness in his tone. Yeah, it is no surprise there. Azazel spoke with sadness as the audience agreed to it. Dai is the reason why this Issei's life is so miserable. Ryu looked down in sadness, seeing how far his counterpart had gone, while Laika and the rest of the hiatus also looked ashamed of themselves. The girls that fell for Ryu were beginning to see their mistakes now. But even then, how will he be able to counter the God's will limiting the spear's capabilities? Azazel spoke, remembering on how Cao failed to defeat Issei. As RageRevan spoke, that will be revealed later on, and the true spear will be one of his biggest creations. The audience shuddered upon this, since if this Issei uses it against them, they are done for. Don't feel sad, it's pointless, and besides, I think the medicine for Ingvold should be wearing off very soon, right? Issei spoke in a neutral tone. Ingvold was surprised by this. How would Issei know about the medicine? Dai was the one that gave it to me. Ingvold thought with disbelief. But even then, why did you help her back then? The man asked Issei as Issei sighed. I loved her, once upon a time, that is why I gave her the medicine. Even then, it was a temporary fix, since it was still in its prototype stage. That is why it was temporary, but then, she chose my brother. Issei spoke with a sad tone. Honestly, it still pained me back then that she was with my brother, and even then, I tried to convince her that I was the one to save her, but then Issei trailed off in sadness. She called you a liar and went to your brother. The man ended it with equal sadness. Issei only looked away and spoke with a sad tone. Yeah. Ingvold was beyond livid seeing her counterpart was acting like this. Even those that loved Issei like Valerie, Yasaka and LeFay were equally angered by this. The audience beside them had a hard time calming them down. RageRevan released an aura to calm them down, which they did so. They still were angry by what was happening. As RageRevan spoke, now, there won't be any fighting. The girls nodded, albeit reluctantly, as they all looked at Ryu with anger in their eyes. They really hated him at this point. Ryu shuddered seeing the four angry women glaring at him, while his family tried to calm the situation down. Ingvold was surprised by this. She knew of Issei's feelings of her, but she belonged to Dai. She chose him because he was the one to save her. She refused to believe him, and many other did support Dai, so she believed in him, that he was her savior, and Issei was a liar. My heart was hurting seeing those two together, and my soul was dying from seeing them together, but I guess I need to accept the truth that she wasn't meant for me," Issei ended with a sad tone. "Okay, but even then, that doesn't answer my question properly. If you knew she was rude, then you should have let her wither away. Why did you give her the medicine?" the man asked Issei, who responded. "Anyone would have helped her. I just did the right thing back then." Issei murmured the last part. "You are a good person, Issei. You have to sometimes get over your love. She wasn't meant for you, and you realize this. You just have to find the one you love." The man gave some of his words of wisdom as he continued, "Not to mention, you saved her from Nyx, and I doubt that she would be the same if you hadn't reached at the right time. But just like the others, she is blinded by the lies." The girls lost their anger and looked away with sadness in their eyes. They wanted to tell him to live his life normally, but they couldn't. "I am starting to think that this is going to bite our counterparts back really badly." Azazel spoke as some of the audience that heard him agreed to it. Ingvold kept her mouth. She refused to believe that this is happening. She looked at Issei and eventually decided to come out from the shadows. Issei and the man looked at her. He was worried that the man's secret identity will be revealed. However, he noticed Ingvold had a look of sadness and anger on his face. She raised her hand to slap Issei. However, Issei grabbed her hand before it could reach his face. She struggled to get her hand free. Issei was also not happy that she attacked him. The man was ready to defend Issei, but using his free hand, he gave him a signal to stop. "No way," Ingvold spoke with utter disbelief. She never thought that she would go this far. She was angered by how far her counterpart was manipulated. Mary looked at Ingvold's counterpart angrily. She would have crushed her had she existed in this world, along with Dai, relationship be damned. The audience themselves was horrified, as they hoped that Issei does not harm her in any way. Some of them, however, believed that this was justified if Issei does the same thing he did to Akeno. "You better have a good reason for trying to slap me, Leviathan," Issei exclaimed with fury. "Don't lie, you are not the one to save me. Dai was the one. You are jealous that I am with your brother," Ingvold exclaimed with equal fury in her voice. "Then why are you here? Why did you slap me? If you don't believe what I said, then why are you even wasting your time here? If you don't want to believe me, then don't believe my lies." Issei spoke in a cold tone. Issei released her hand and spoke. "The next time you slap or hurt me, don't expect me not to fight back, Ingvold. This is your last warning." Issei threatened her, leaving her flabbergasted. She never expected Issei to threaten her. He started to head towards the door and spoke in a mocking tone. "I would rather date a Diet Coke bottle over you." Ingvold was speechless over what Issei had spoken. She was completely silent and stunned by what Issei had done, along with the threat. "Now that's gotta sting," Biku muttered to Arthur, who agreed in response. Issei headed inside, leaving Ingvold shocked. The man from earlier spoke. "I am afraid you are wrong, Miss Leviathan. He's lying. I refuse to believe him. He is just jealous that I am with his brother." Ingvold spoke with a cold tone. "No, you are wrong, or should I say everyone is wrong. Let me show you." The man removed a recording orb, another sacred gear that Issei created that can store videos the size of 100 terabytes, while declaring, "Witness the truth, queen of the false hero." The orb started to glow, revealing a small recording, as the Ingvold would witness something that would shock her. "Seems like we are going to see another of that fraud's lies." Auden spoke with disdain as Vidar added, "It sucks that our counterparts believed a moron for so long." Ingvold was also curious on what she will be seeing, as she knows that he was a fraud. She can only hope that she makes herself better and does not worsen her relationship with Issei. However, a part of her believes that this Issei and this Ingvold should never become a couple, no matter what happens. The scene changed to Dai, who was seated on the couch with a smile. He had just managed to get Ingvold's love, with Crom speaking in pure fury. "You are a horrible person for doing this to your brother, Dai. You already have the entirety of the Orc and some members of the student council, yet you keep doing this to him. You deny him any shred of love or happiness. Wait, he is dating some of my peerage as well." Sona spoke with shock as she continued, "Issei wouldn't even think of making a move on any of us." Sona had remembered an incident that had happened between them before they were teleported here. "Yes, you are one of the girls that is dating him." Sona gritted her teeth in anger, causing the entire peerage to flinch. Even Jinshiro was angry at this. They all were glaring at Ryu, who was looking away. He had no intention of dating Sona or his peerage. Hell, he just meets them whenever he has to go to the student council. You little Sona took a deep breath to calm her anger. Knowing that Ryu and Dai were different, it did not change the fact that her counterpart was dating him. She hated that for a certain event that happened between Issei and herself. The other members were also horrified, wondering who all were dating this fraud. They hated the fact that he is not only dating everyone from the Orc, but also some of the student council members. Crom hated his current host. He wanted to be freed from him as soon as possible, as Dai spoke with an arrogant smile. "But you must admit that my plan is going pretty well." The truth will come out one day. I am only helping you because I don't have a choice. When I got sealed in the gear, you are using me for your own benefits. You use my power for your own selfish benefits. Crom spoke with a pure cold tone, filled to the brim with spite. All dragons trapped in the gear can just watch and not control their host's actions. If they want to use their power, they will. You have no pride, Dai, and even if you have that one of rubbish, and every dragon has that. Crom continued in the same tone. I don't blame Crom for his anger. Albion spoke from the gear. He was equally mad at how Dai used his powers for his own selfishness, as Vitra added. True, we have rules. No dragon is allowed to take their mate, regardless, it is their choice, right? Albion responded in agreement. Yeah, our counterparts must have been helpless in this. Many of the guests agreed with the dragon's words. There is nothing they can do with it. Dai may have charmed, but they did the same deeds like Dai did, with Akeno attacking Issei without provocation. That alone showed that they were all guilty for making Issei the way he is today. And what about it? They will be mine in the future. And they will be my wives, not his. Dai spoke in a sing-along tone. The bearer of Drag will one day crush you and will expose you for the poser and liar you really are. And one day, that day will come, Crom spoke with a mocking tone. Always remember this, Dai. The first and most common rule is stealing a dragon's love. And you broke that rule. Crom ended with a mocking tone. So what? Nobody will come to know. It is not like they believe in him, Dai taunted in a mocking manner. I don't think your love will survive. Crom spoke in a mocking tone, and your actions have consequence, Dai. Remember that. Crom ended the connection, leaving Dai with an overconfident smile, knowing that nothing will change. I can't wait to see his pride get crushed. Mary spoke with anger in her voice. She was ready to pummel Dai completely, but she knew that there can't be any fights in the theater. Ryu himself was wanting to pummel Dai for his actions. It was like viewing a bad reflection of yourself. The Hyoudous were disgusted with Dai, believing they are at fault for raising Dai like this and making him the rotten man he is today. Ingvold was on her knees, with the man looking at her without any empathy. She had tears in her eyes as she spoke. Know why? Ingvold spoke with a shaky and hazy voice. She has realized the truth. The man then spoke. But I am not done yet. You should have seen that he nearly died for your sake. This happened before the one you saw. The man removed another recording gear and showed her an additional recording. Oh, so now she regrets. Ingvold spoke with an angered tone, as she hated her counterpart for showing this regret. She never would have believed Dai since her bond with Issei was permanent. The part of me thinks she realizes her error now, and out of all the girls, I'd say that Ingvold was the one that did one of the most damage in the shortest amount of time. Azazel spoke with a thought as Mary responded. Yep, I agree. They screwed up their only chance of being with him. Mary's words were agreed by most of the cast. The scene shows the recording where Issei was on the ground. He had several wounds on his body. He was passed out with several wounds on his body, as well as a pool of blood on the ground where he was. The audience were horrified by what happened to Issei. Some of them were even crying, especially the Hyoudous and some of the Grimoires. Many were angered seeing how brutally he was beaten. Ingvold herself was crying, while Mary clenched her fists in anger as tears were falling from her eyes. She was literally a ticking time bomb. While Milikas and Kunu were made to close their eyes, seeing the brutal fate Issei was in. Isaka herself was crying seeing Issei in this condition. Arthur and Biku were livid, seeing how much Issei has sacrificed himself for them and how he was treated. Additionally, even those that loved him were crying seeing this. Ryu was angered seeing his brother like this. He knew that Nyx was the one and also knew what will happen next. Partner, stay alive. Drake shouted in worry. Beside him was an unconscious Ingvold and a damaged Nyx. She was also out of the fight as her godly killer virgin clothing was destroyed, leaving her naked body. That is when Dai showed up seeing the situation. He had a sinister smile as he spoke. It is time to be the hero, and well, what a beauty. I must admit that my brother always had a good choice in women. Dai spoke with a grin looking at Ingvold. I decided to wake up Ingvold and tell her the lie that he was the one that saved her. Drake wanted to reveal the truth, but he made a promise to his partner to keep himself hidden from the rest of the supernatural world. He hated that he must follow a promise, even when it ends up hurting his best friend, due to his pride. He gritted his teeth in fury. He wanted to escape the gear and burn Dai down to the very soul, but there was nothing he could do. He was stuck in the gear. After that, Issei woke up. When he was being healed up, he saw the Dai with Ingvold, and this broke his heart. He was too weak to talk to Ingvold and reveal her the truth. Furthermore, Riaz and the others were also there, with them telling that Dai was her savior, and she eventually believed their lies. The audience was appalled by this. Instead of helping his brother, he decided to go after Ingvold. Many were angrily glaring at Dai, as Mary finally lost her patience in the viewing, as she started to march towards Ryu to punish him for what he had done. Now, Mary, I know you are mad, but I would advise you to sit down. RageRevan spoke as Mary was barely controlling herself. she looked at Revan and spoke. Please, let me deal with my brother. No, I hate myself for calling him that. How could he be this selfish? Ryu looked at her sister's gaze. He was fearful, but understood her anger even more. He himself was angry at her counterpart as Revan spoke seriously. Sit down, Mary. If you don't comply, I will force you to do so. You are forgetting one thing. Ryu is not I. Mary looked at him angrily as she responded with anger. TCH. She sat back to her seat. Many of the guests were livid by what Dai had done to Issei, including Ryu. Sure, he is arrogant, but he is not heartless. You have to be a next-level monster to ignore Issei like this. Meanwhile, Surziches was now angry at what Riaz and the other girls had done, as he asked, is this the man you wanted to be with? Now I understand the complete value of Issei, don't you ever go near him ever again. Riaz was crying when she heard of this. Surziches was disappointed in Riaz and realized that she has taken Issei's emotions for granted, as similar emotions were present in the rest of the girls that had betrayed Issei. The recording soon ended as Ingvold was in her knees seeing all of this. She was crying profusely as her sacred gear reacted to her sadness, seeing that Issei nearly died for her and Dai was nothing but a bloody liar. She got up from the ground slowly while holding the gem against her chest. I am sorry, please, forgive me, Issei. Ingvold spoke between sobs. She couldn't handle what she just saw. It was like a huge slap to her face. Furthermore, she tried to slap Issei and the image of his condition. The man watched with utter coldness as the wind breeze dropped, revealing him to be none other than Malak. Now where was that girl who protected that liar with her life? Malak spoke coldly before leaving from there. The reason Ingvold was unable to identify his voice was because he used magic to change his voice. As for his aura, he is capable of hiding it. You've got to be kidding me, Surziches exclaimed with horror. He knew what this clearly meant. This meant everyone in the theater knew exactly what this meant. They knew that Issei is one of their enemies. Indeed, this Issei is evil and is going to be your enemy, but none of you will realize it until it is too late. Revan's words horrified many of the people present. They had no words knowing that this Issei is completely malicious. As he continued, see, I told you, if you treat him badly and take him for granted, this is what is going to happen. Now watch your extinction. Revan spoke coldly as everyone became afraid of this version of Issei, who was clearly ruthless and villainous than their Issei. Considering he has that book as well, Sikvara spoke with fear in her voice, as Sayer gadded. We are so done for, he will show us no mercy, especially with how we have treated him. Sayer's words brought many to fear, as some of the guests were saddened and fearful by what Issei has become. Now the scene that will be shown will be of the next day after the events of today. Issei was heading downstairs, trying to keep his mind off from what happened yesterday, as he took his food and a can of Diet Coke for himself. Brother, can we talk? Aika looked at Issei, but was surprised when her brother did not respond to what she said. He had opened his can and started to eat his food. However, he started to become uncomfortable with all the stares. He spoke in a cold tone. What do you guys want? What we need is information about that Malak. Vali spoke in a tone hinting of anger and annoyance. Issei looked at her dead in the eye and spoke. Or maybe learn to treat him with respect, then maybe he will consider helping him. Valerie spoke angrily seeing how they are treating him, as Azazel spoke with response. I can't wait to see her experience when Issei turns on them. The audience seemed to agree with Azazel, as they all knew the dread they would be facing once Issei turns on them. I said it once before, and I will say it again, not my problem, Issei spoke while sipping some of his Diet Coke. Seeing as nothing was changing, he took his plate and drink and headed to the room. Even his parents were appalled by his attitude, with Goro speaking. I never knew that you were selfish. I said it before, not my monkeys, not my circus father, just give me my end of the deal, and the information is yours. Issei spoke with a mocking smile, before heading to his room, leaving everyone shocked by his attitude. He had understood that either Dai or Aika must have told them about the meeting. Mickey and Goro were disgusted by their counterparts. They knew that they were the reason why Issei is like this. They also reflected on how Issei was behaving and looked down in shame. Meanwhile, Ingvold was in her room. Her cheeks were dried due to the tears streaming from her eyes. The truth had completely broken her, and it did not help that no one would believe her if she had told her what she had just witnessed. She was in no mood in going to Kuo Academy, especially not in her current condition. Her fighting spirit had completely faded, and her eyes had no life, their dark circles present due to the lack of sleep. Furthermore, her hair was completely messy. He loved me and I treated him like garbage. What kind of person am I? He was a gem. Well, I threw him away. I don't deserve to be with him. Ingvold spoke while sobbing. You were a fool for blindly believing those two. At least you are learning your lesson. Shame. You may never be with Issei. Ingvold spoke coldly. Well, those that knew Ingvold saw her drastic change. She hated what happened to Issei and the betrayal he went through, and hated her so-called friends who abandoned him behind his back. I agree, my brother already suffered because of him, and I don't want her near him. Mary agreed with Ingvold's words. They all looked at Ingvold on the screen. Ingvold opened her eyes, tears falling from them. She treated him like garbage. That is when a knock was heard from the door. Go away. I don't want to talk to anyone. Ingvold angrily shouted at whoever was there. I see, maybe I should come at another time. The man spoke, recognizing the voice, as Ingvold got up rushing to open the door. When she did, she saw that Issei was walking away from the room. No, Issei, wait. Ingvold shouted to garner his attention. He looked at her and approached her. What happened? Issei asked. He was here for a purpose. Why are you here? Don't you hate me? Ingvold asked, trailing off. I came to give you this, Issei gave her, handing her a bottle of medicine. Why is he helping her? Mary asked angrily, believing that this counterpart of Ingvold does not deserve help, especially with how she treated him. Many of the audience agreed with Mary's words as RageRevan spoke. That will be explained soon enough. But I don't deserve your help, Ingvold spoke, to which Issei chuckled. By that, his chuckle changed to laughter. Ingvold was confused. Why was Issei laughing? Her answer was also received. Oh, you are right, you don't deserve any of my help, Issei spoke with a sinister smile. Oh, I have a bad feeling about this, Lefei spoke, to which Ingvold gulped, wondering what Issei is going to do. You will be seeing Issei's anger, you know, only a few has seen his anger, those that did knew how dangerous it is, right Riaz? RageRevan looked at Riaz, causing her to gulp. She was aware of Issei's anger during the Juggernaut drive where he almost went on a rampage. Additionally, Issei's anger was experienced by almost everyone that saw his Juggernaut drive, along with Valerie and her team, as Valerie spoke to Ingvold. I can only wish your counterpart luck. Ingvold was even more worried on what is going to happen. Then why? Ingvold spoke with a feeling of dread as Issei spoke. Oh, you know why? You really think I was going to care for you after everything you said to me, Leviathan? After every single insult you called me, a liar, a jealous man, to name a few, did you by any chance think I care for you? Issei exclaimed, walking closer to Ingvold, who started to back away. Well, I am sorry, Issei. I did not know about Dai's true nature, Ingvold apologized, trying to calm the situation. She really felt guilty for what she did, however Issei was not having any of that. Issei grabbed her by the hair, pulling her towards him, as she exclaimed in slight pain. Issei, it hurts. I have a bad feeling on this, Yusaka spoke with concern for Issei's state, as Ingvold became fearful of what is going to happen. She had no sympathy for her counterpart, but it was unnerving seeing herself in pain. This hurts. This is nothing compared to the pain I experienced because of you when I tried to save you from Nyx. Am I a second-hand option for you? Is that it? Issei's voice grew with every word. Ingvold started to tear up, not because of Issei pulling her hair, but because of what Issei said to her. No. Ingvold retorted. Yes. That's what you think of me. I am a second-hand car, which is meant for those that don't want to buy a new car. Since Issei's brother Dai is a fucking jerk, I am a replacement. After everything, you really think I care for you? No. 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 Issei shouted as tears fell from Ingvold's eyes. I do not care for you, my dear Ingvold. I want you to live because I want you to see the consequences of your actions. I can't allow you to fall asleep now, can I? That will be no fun now, right, Lady Ingvold? That would be mercy. And I won't let that happen. I will make you see the monster that you're responsible for creating. I want you see as I will take away everything and anything away from you, which held some importance to you. You shall watch as I destroy and burn down the very people and world you once cared for right in front of your eyes, and you won't be able to do a thing except watching in despair, losing your beloved boyfriend, friends and family, everything by my hands. And for that to happen, Issei screamed the last part. Drake was worried about Issei as he sent calming energy to him. Ingvold, on the other hand, had fear in her eyes. Issei released her as she dropped on her behind. Her legs were spread on the ground. She was crying endlessly. Issei took a deep breath to calm down. The audience shivered from Issei's outburst. They shivered seeing Issei's fury. Ingvold herself was crying from his outburst. She couldn't imagine her Issei acting like this. Mary was calming her down, with herself being shocked and horrified by Issei's anger. It's okay, Mary spoke while rubbing her head in an attempt to calm her down. Ingvold kept crying on Mary's clothes as she was horrified seeing her like this. She hated what happened to her brother, which turned him into a hateful person. She had never seen Issei angry herself and dreaded this version of Issei attacking them. The kid's anger is really something, Azazel spoke as he watched both Yusaka and Grafia calming their children down, where he saw Ayu and Ika shivering along with his parents. His anger was really something. What's worse is that his threat is really something he is going to do, Valerie added her own words. They knew this Issei clearly is unhinged and aggressive due to his upbringing. Riaz and her group were themselves fearful of this variant of Issei, as Riaz herself spoke. He is really a monster. I agree, he is not someone we should be crossing. Akeno spoke, equally fearful of this variant of her ex-lover. She was terrified of Issei at this point. So you have a choice. You can either be a quitter and wither away, or you can take the medicine and live with the consequence of your action. Issei exclaimed as he kept the medicine on the ground and walked away, not bothering to see Ingvold's face. But not before saying, "I used to keep my heart for you, not my self-respect that you can destroy it whenever you feel like it." Issei's voice held disdain as Ingvold broke down into sobs. She wept a lot that day. Issei did not even bother to check on her. Partner Drake spoke in worry. "I am fine, it's just that." She brought back painful memories of my past. Issei spoke with a sad tone. His eyes were teary-eyed. He did not know exactly what is going on with him now. Drake then suggested, "You should have a can of Diet Coke, since it will help to calm yourself. You need to have a cool mind when you deal with them." Sooner or later, Issei responded by gritting his teeth. He was going to make Dai's life a living hell when he gets the chance. The audience shuddered by Issei's hatred for his own brother. They knew he had every right to hate his own brother for the amount of injustice he had gone through. They couldn't blame him for his hatred and anger against them. What's worse is that they are the reason why Issei turned evil, and many of the faction leaders were worried and guilty for what they had done to their Issei. Their only choice was to at least come to an understanding where Issei would not hate them. The scene changed to Issei was chilling, playing Brawl Stars on his mobile phone. He was this close to defeating that damn Hank, who has been a pain on the map, destroying his tick even away from the walls. However, as he was playing, he was being watched by the orc minus Ingvold and Valerie's team. He became uncomfortable. "There is something called as privacy, you know," Issei spoke in an annoyed tone as he continued playing. "Using tick is really annoying if you'd ask me." Azazel spoke with a smirk, remembering on how he used to harass his opponents, preventing them any way of escaping, as Valerie asked, "How would you know about this?" Valerie asked, to which Azazel responded, "It is fun destroying some kids in the map, causing them to quit the game." Many looked at Azazel, like as if he was child. However, the former governor general could care less about their opinions. Aika, annoyed by her brother's attitude, snatched the phone from him, with him shouting as he exclaimed in an annoyed manner, "Okay, taking a phone away from a gamer is a cardinal sin. Never ever do that unless you want to be beaten up." Some of the audience had to agree. Taking a phone away regardless is an invasion of privacy, and Issei could have done anything to deal with them. Aika was pale as she hoped that her older brother wouldn't do anything to her. "Hey. I was this close to winning. Do you know how hard it is to deal with that brawler? God, Supercell made him broken. Would you stop being a brat and help us? We need your help," Aika exclaimed in a demanding tone, ignoring her brother's attitude. Issei sighed. "Like I said, free Nix and the information is yours. That's it," Isay spoke while shrugging. "Oh yeah, maybe if you'd actually take the deal, which is not a bad one, then he would listen. Hell, I doubt he would even be on Malak's side to begin with." Mary spoke with a mocking tone as Aika looked down in sadness, seeing her counterpart act like this. "Mary is right, our chances would have played into favor, and all we had to do was to accept a relatively simple deal. Why the hell did we not accept his condition?" Syzygy spoke with an annoyed tone. "It was because their pride was struck so badly that there was nothing they could do. They value their pride over their factions." Auden spoke with an equally frustrated tone as he hated his counterpart for his actions. "How can you be Naya's brother?" Kuroka spoke in a mocking tone while looking at her Dai. "Well, you see, when two people love each other, that is when." Issei spoke but was interrupted by Aika. "Stop fooling around and tell us about Malak. Innocent people are dying. With your help we can save lives," Aika spoke in an annoyed tone. "Like I said, not my monkeys, not my circus," Issei spoke with a smile as he then continued. "And besides, you can't even take a joke. That is why you are still single." Issei continued, drawing the anger of many present. "How pitiful it is," Issei spoke while nodding sideways, having a smile. Many were driven crazy by Issei's attitude. Kuroka was embarrassed by how she acted in the situation. As Mary shook her head in disappointment, Aika was equally as embarrassed. "It is because of you, Akeno is in this condition," Issei Hyoudou Rias exclaimed angrily, remembering the robotic state she was in and pointing to her. "First, don't blame me for your flaws. You can't solve the problems on your own," Issei spoke. Rias was going to counter, however Issei continued, "You ain't gonna force me to talk to something I don't want to. I am just a spectator. You guys are the fighters." Issei got up and snatched the phone from Aika, who was unable to stop her older brother. He looked at the match and sighed in relief. He had won, and it was thanks to El Primo saving the day in the last 5 seconds. The match would have been lost if Hank would have taken out his tick. As Aika was. Well, at least he won. Azazel spoke with a smile, happy with what happened, as Yusaka spoke with a tone full of dumbfoundedness. "Is that what you are concerned about?" Yusaka looked at Azazel, who only gave a nod as he spoke. "Rias blames my student for the problems she is facing. From what I recollect, Issei did so much for them, and this is how she repaid them. I see no concern in having any sympathy for them. He did so much and helped with their problems, and this was his reward, and I think this is true for this Issei, right?" Indeed, Revan responded to Azazel's question. Well, Yusaka soon spoke with agreement. I guess you are right. I was actually concerned about how they will deal with Melak. If anything, even I have no sympathies for cheaters. Some of the guests frowned at Yusaka and Azazel's attitude, but they couldn't blame them for being like that. As for Riaz and Akeno, they both looked down in shame and sadness, as they chose someone who might abandon them if he sees fit, over someone who would do anything for them. Valerie, annoyed by his attitude, grabbed him by the shirt and exclaimed angrily. Listen, I am getting tired of your attitude, so I will beat the truth from you. Issei did not seem bothered and chuckled as he spoke. Such a shame that you couldn't beat him, with the original divine dividing, yet I performed a feat stronger than yours, so you desire to have a small advantage. Issei's eyes started to glow red as he spoke. No, you are afraid of losing, since I indirectly destroyed your pride, didn't I? You all are afraid of losing, don't you? Valerie had fear in her eyes. She seemed to be the next target of Issei. She hoped she would survive what would happen. Azazel, Team/Dog and Valerie team were concerned for her, along with several of the audience. Vali started to grow afraid. Arthur tried to separate the two, however it was too late, as Issei grabbed her by the head and before she could react, unleashed a surge of voltage at Valerie. Baba baba Vali's exclaimed as her body shook and twitched with electricity. This was not ordinary electricity, this was electricity enchanted by dragon-slaying magic. Once this was done, Vali's hand lost her grip and she was smoking due to the electric attack. Issei then flung Vali to a nearby wall. Vali was sent flying. Upon closer inspection, Vali had blisters all over her body, in different locations. She was groaning in pain. Arthur noticed a glove on his hand that had electric insignia on it. Interesting, so lightning slayer gloves do work. Issei looked at the black glove as the white glow on them goes off, rendering them inactive. It was another sacred gear that Issei had developed. He had never tested it, but now it works. He put his phone inside and brought his second glove, which he wore it in his free hand. Watch out, the lightning from the gloves has Dragon Slayer properties. It could be a Dragon Slayer weapon, Albion exclaimed in worry, while trying to keep Valerie alive. Valerie was pale seeing herself like this. This Issei was clearly villainous and did not hesitate to get his hands dirty, as Azazel asked, let me guess, another of his sacred gears. Yes, Lightning Slayer gloves have both dragon slaying magic and holy magic, two weaknesses that will deal severe damage to anyone that is a devil and a dragon. It is a double disadvantage to Valerie. Valerie was even more fearful, as many others were concerned for Valerie. There was fear in their eyes, knowing that Issei won't hesitate to kill them in any way. They hated that their counterparts are responsible for making Issei a monster. I just hope that no one else provokes him in any way. Tobio spoke with worry, as he knew that Issei was aggressive and prayed no one else gets in his way. Indeed, but that is not all it is capable of. Issei spoke with a smile, causing many to get on their guard. Why you? Valerie growled, causing Issei's attention to turn to her. Oh, don't be like that. I held back the lightning on the first try, but I ain't gonna stay here being quiet. Issei spoke coldly while he walked towards Valerie, with his gloves glowing as they surged electric current. Valerie instinctively, she was afraid of him. However, before he could move, a sword came in front of him. This caused the electricity to disappear as he turned his attention to Kiba, who spoke in a serious tone. Make one move, and you will regret it, Hyoudou. You had to jinx it, Tobio. Natsume spoke with an annoyed tone, as Tobio sighed. It seems like they are all fools, to provoke a literal being who can manipulate and create the sacred gears. Kiba was fearful of what Issei was going to do to him, as Riaz and her peerage hoped Issei won't do anything. So you trade your life for hers? Interesting. Issei turned to Kiba with a malicious grin. Issei brought out his book and summoned a skull on the top of his right glove. Kiba was even more fearful, as the audience were at the edge of their seats. The audience were fearful on what Issei will do to them. Valerie watched as she saw the skull glowing red, as she shouted to get their attention. Everyone get away from him. But it was too late. A red beam hit Kiba, as he held his head in pain. He fell on the ground screaming in pain. Issei had given him hallucination of his comrades dying over and over again. No, Riaz spoke with dread in her voice, while Kiba went pale white to see himself suffering his worst nightmares over and over again. If anything, he is sadistic. I wonder what he has planned for us. Surziches spoke with worry as he looked at his sister and her peerage, all of whom had fear in their hearts. They made this Issei a monster, but they wondered if their Issei would turn out like this one. If he did, he must be convinced that they are not a threat to him, otherwise they would be done for. The rest of the leaders had to agree with Surzich's words. Issei is dangerous and not to be taken lightly. They want to make peace, not ruin it. Riaz looked at him in fear. She was scared that the same thing that happened to Akeno should not happen to him. She watched in horror as Kiba pleaded with tears in his eyes. Please, make it stop, I beg you. I am sorry, but seeing you in this state does put a smile on my face, and your screams are like music to my ears, Issei responded with a smile. Issei was ready to increase the hallucination to Kiba, but Rias got in the way. She looked at him in fear, tears welling up in her eyes. I will not let why you hurt anyone, so you better stop, Rias spoke, trying to muster up the bravest voice she could. Issei only grabbed her by the chin, which is when she started to hyperventilate. Rias and Kiba were horrified seeing how Issei was able to break the two with relative ease. Kiba failed to help Issei when he needed him the most, as he was unable to reach out to him when they dated his brother. When he came to know, it was too late. This was a consequence, and now he knew one thing. If Issei wanted to, he could have done some serious damage. Bravery reminds me of the old days. Well, let me make myself clear. I am not helping you till I get something in return, and I will not hesitate to kill you to prove my point. Alright, Issei, or at least Rias, who stopped hyperventilating. Asia and Kaneko were trembling in fear seeing what Issei had done. They only watched Issei head out of the room. Nobody dared to stop him. Asia and Kaneko themselves were pale seeing themselves act like this. They were worried on the eventual reunion they would have with their Issei as time passes by. What kind of a person is he? LeFay exclaimed while shivering in fear, watching Kiba still screaming and crying due to the hallucinations. He is a monster that is not to be crossed with. Arthur spoke in a serious tone, with LeFay agreeing to what her brother said. Dai saw the whole scene with complete fear, while Crom had a mocking smile seeing his host in this condition. Aika made a mental note not to mess with him ever again. He is worse than a monster, Rias thought with tears. She was downright afraid of Issei at this point. You made this Issei into a monster. Your treatment of him was responsible. If you can make such a good man into a monster, then you're screwed. In almost every reality, if Issei had malice in his heart, he would have done some serious damage to the factions, even destroy him. RageRevan spoke as fear was instilled in the hearts of the people present. Even those that cared for Issei dreaded seeing a variant of Issei that can cause some serious and potential damage. I have seen many such worlds where this has happened. If you treat and care for Issei well, none of this happens, but if you don't, well, this reality should show you. RageRevan spoke as the viewing continued. The scene changes to the next day where Azazel, Surziches along with his wife Grafia, Auden and Michael were all present. As they remembered what Issei did yesterday, they were all serious on what happened. Well, it seems like the Red Dragon won't hesitate to torture and kill if we mess with him, Azazel spoke with worry, remembering the blisters on his adoptive daughter. Surziches gritted his teeth in fury remembering his sister and her peerage's condition. And if we add to the sacred gears he can copy and use, he is someone to fear, Auden spoke while stroking his beard. Michael shivered due to the fact that he can mimic the truth idea of the true Longinus. Obviously, he would be. If anything, this wouldn't be a situation if they had just accepted his deal, Auden spoke while twitching his forehead as the leaders and other gods agreed to his words. RageRevan, may I ask you a question? Auden looked at RageRevan, who looked at him and nodded. He paused a viewing and Auden asked, is there a reality or a timeline where the same situation happens and the leaders accept Issei's condition without hesitation? RageRevan thought for a moment and responded, now that is an interesting reality. There may be, who knows, the multiverse is potentially endless. There could be a timeline where this happens. I will get back to you if I get any information. Auden nodded in understanding as RageRevan replayed the viewing. Many remembered how Valerie and Kiba suffered, as Valerie was still recovering from the blisters Issei gave her. Azazel was filled with dread that Issei is able to use Dragon Slayer magic. As this was going on, Ingvold came in with drinks, mostly tea for everyone, as she brought in a tray full of them. Dai went to greet her, mainly to show that their relationship was going well. But Ingvold walked past him, much to his surprise. Well, it seems like our pillar is having a lover's quarrel with one of his women, Auden spoke in a tone full of jokes. He changed his tone and spoke in a serious one, but leaving that aside, we need to find a way to negotiate with him. After the drinks were placed, Ingvold kept the tray down on a free table as she stood beside her king. Dai, for some unknown reason, felt nervousness due to the stare Ingvold was giving him. Brai looked down in sadness, seeing how far he had fallen in this reality, while Ingvold shivered remembering seeing how angry Issei could get. She knew it was rare, but that alone made her dread about it. I have a feeling that this version of Lord Auden has no clue about what is going to happen. Thor spoke to which Vidar and Auden agreed to this in response. They knew things are only going to get bad for them from here on out. Azazel was looking at the sofa as Valerie Lucifer, who was in the same condition as Ria's Gremory and her peerage, wondering what the actual hell is going on in this house now. Azazel thought, trying to make sense of what is going on. No, he can't be free, Ria spoke, garnering the attention of the others. He is not afraid of torturing and killing us. He should be locked up. Ria's voice was filled with fear. She remembered how helpless she was when Issei completely defeated Kiba and Valerie while barely trying. I am sorry, Gremory, but our hands are tied, Auden spoke with a serious tone. However, even he felt horrible asking for Issei's help despite what he did to them. If we need a fighting chance against Malak, we need his help. But Rias tried to find an excuse, only for Surziches to interject her and respond. I am sorry Riaz, but right now Issei's help is necessary for the factions. We have no choice. Riaz looked in horror as she did not have her brother's support. As much as I hate to say it, I agree with my counterpart. When it comes to the factions, I am a leader first and your brother second, so don't expect me to support you in this. Riaz was stunned by this revelation, but she nodded regardless, as Serafel also spoke. Serziches is right, Isona cuts her off and speaks. I am aware Lady Leviathan, your faction will always come first over me. Serafel smiled in response, as she was happy that her sister was mature. She frowned seeing how immature Riaz was, which caused Issei to change so drastically. Well, all we need to do is convince Zeus to release Nyx. It is the only way we can get Issei's support, Azazel spoke in a serious tone. But how? Michael asked. Zeus is not fond of Issei because of his last encounter, and he will not release Nyx, knowing what she is capable of. We need to find a way to convince him. Malak is not going to stop his attacks, and it won't be time until we will be in such a situation that Malak will have his cornered. Serziches spoke, as dread emanated from his voice. He was worried about his family and faction, since Malak does not care who is next on the assault. Not to mention the devils, the fallen and the Greek are suffering the most casualties. Adding insult to injury, Issei is working with them. Serziches spoke with sadness, as the other leaders and guests agreed to it, saddened by what things have become in this reality. Serzich's voice was agreed by Azazel as well, since the recent attack took a lot of lives. If this continues, then everyone will be wiped out. This is it for the meeting. Someone needs to convince Zeus, or we are done for. Serziches ended the meeting, as the leaders teleported back to their homes. Ingvold took the tray and started to head back inside, as Dai held her shoulder. What do you want? Dai, Ingvold spoke, trying her best not to get angry at what Dai was doing. I wanted to ask, are you alright? You have been acting distant lately, Dai asked with concern, however he only did so that she thinks that he is concerned for her. I am glad I was with Grafia for training, otherwise Riaz would have influenced me just like she did with my former peerage. Ingvold spoke with anger in her voice. It was Riaz that got everyone to betray Issei, or those that did betray Issei. Riaz and the ones that betrayed Issei looked down in sadness, knowing almost everyone in the audience either is disappointed, angry or hates them. No, I just have a lot of work. Now if you will excuse me, I need to talk to someone. Ingvold spoke in a neutral tone. She wanted to leave the room as soon as possible, as she did not want to be near him anymore. I wondered what was wrong, as he could not understand why Ingvold was so distant from him. She has been acting like this since 2 days. She refused to talk to him, or even go near him. Even the other girls were confused by what had happened. They needed to talk to Ingvold sometime later. If anything, I doubt they would even realize that, since they are no short pawns of this fraud version of Issei's brother. Kusha muttered as Sayerg agreed to her and responded. Indeed, we are all pawns. The fact that our counterparts act so blind is appalling. I have no words. Regulus even added his own words. I agree, worse, the one that is wanting to save us now hates us. Issei was watching the entire meeting from one of his recording cameras, as he spoke with an angered tone. Nobody says it, I am cursed with these powers in my whole life. I have been living his life. Issei spoke coldly, as he continued, with a sinister smile. I surpass the truth from all. I will be their judge, jury and executioner. There was no plan Issei had for the factions, but that was not needed, since the factions don't stand a chance against him. The factions had fear in their hearts, knowing that this Issei wants them dead and eliminated from this world, due to his past. I was once their true hero, but nobody believed me, no matter how much I tried. Issei spoke with slight anger, remembering his past. But now, it will be fun, when their true hero turns into their worst enemy. Issei spoke coldly. Issei remembered 2 instances of his memory. The first was when he showed Seraph Gabriel hallucinations belonging to what happened to him and his memories. With the help of Malak, his goal was to take the happiness from her by showing a fraction of the truth. He tried to help her before, but no matter how pure you are, there will always be a dark side. Heck, even Lucifer and Azazel were once angels, just like Gabriel. She talked behind his back and insulted him about how much of a pervert he is and how useless he is. That of course this was Dai's work. They were wrong, and the true useless is his brother. Gabriel hated her counterpart, such that her wings started to flicker due to her anger. She hated that how she also easily fell for the manipulations of a fraud. She wanted to make Dai pay with blood. Sister, please, I know you are mad, but calm down. Gabriel realized this and took a deep breath to calm herself down. Even the other angels present were equally angered. The second one was when Akeno tried to torture him for speaking ill of Anata. However, Issei used the same sacred gear that he had used on Kiba to make her hallucinate her mother's demise over and over again. She became so detached from reality due to recalling her mother's demise over and over again, resulting in her emotions becoming robot-like. Issei was expecting her to turn insane, but it seemed like that did not work. And honestly, he wanted to do this to the others, especially Rias, Kuroka, Aika and Yusaka, but he saw that nothing would change. He could show them his superiority and show how much worthless they are, but he wondered whether they would even learn. Realizing that they never loved or cared for him, he decided to change his mind. Instead, he had other plans on dealing with them. He knew each of their weaknesses and used it to his advantage. They had relationships, they had loved ones, and all of them had one strength. They all depended on his brother, and once the truth is revealed, well, let's just say most of the girls will become husks like Akeno, and instead of doing it himself one by one, he can hit multiple birds with a single stone. Furthermore, girls of Dai like Yusaka and Serafal had more than one weakness, and that being Yusaka's daughter Kunu and Serafal's sister Sona. If he went after them and attacked them, then he can only imagine the dread their faces would have. They would completely lose their will to fight, and they would become distressed and fall into despair. He can't wait to enjoy their suffering. Serafal and Yusaka became pale by this Issei's thought process. They held their loved ones in fear of this Issei coming after them. He really hated them, and that alone terrified and saddened them. Even Sona and Kunu themselves were horrified by what Issei had become. He wouldn't. RageRevan looked at him and spoke. He would. It is because your counterparts also treated him badly. He does not care if you live or die at this point. He wants to torment you and make you suffer just like you did. The guests were horrified by this Issei's actions and thoughts. They feared on what he was going to do, and he also had the power to do so. He can easily ruin them if he so wanted to. Were our counterparts as bad due to the lies Dai spread? Or were we rotten towards this Issei? RageRevan looked at Surziches, who asked the question, to which RageRevan responded. Some of the audience were even worse than Dai upon his treatment. Dai spread rumors, however you all were also involved in his torment. He could care less if it died, or if anything happened to you guys. The guests were saddened by this. They hated what their counterparts did to Issei. They made this monster, and now they had to deal with the consequences of his actions. Enjoy your love life while you can die. Soon, your real face will come to everyone, just you wait. And besides, to quote from a certain joker, all it takes is one bad day to change a man's life. Issei spoke with a grin. Normally he would do it right away, but he waited for the right opportunity to expose him. The reason was that he waited for the factions to become desperate, and when they become too desperate, the people of the factions will lose faith in their respective leaders. And when the time is ripe, he will expose it to them, thus causing the morale to crumble to the point of no return. All he needs to do is push one domino, and the rest will fall down automatically. The factions paled seeing how Issei wants them to suffer. RageRevan was right about one thing. If he wanted to, he could have caused some serious damage to factions if he wanted to. If Hades came to know about this, he would have absolutely asked for Issei to join him. However, he had another priority he needed to secure, and this would fall in line when the morale of the factions is at an all-time low. It was the rescue of Nyx. He will achieve that no matter what happens. He remembered that she made him laugh and made him smile, which he never did when he was in the Hyoudou residence or with the factions. All he needed to do is to find the right combination of abilities in the sacred gear, and that is when he will rescue Nyx. He promised her, and he will achieve it. Issei looked at his targets. It was time to hurt his rival permanently, and he knew exactly to go after. He had a sinister grin. Well, after this, there is no turning back. Issei spoke in a cold tone. As he watched the skies, he would soon begin his assault on his new target. Lavinia Rinai. You're kidding, I am Icon's next target? Lavinia asked, completely horrified and pale on this Issei's thoughts. He knew that he would come after someone, but she was not expecting Lavinia would be his victim. Please tell me that this Issei won't do this. Valerie was the one who spoke. She was horrified by what intends to do, refusing to believe the man she cared for would become like this. I am sorry, you two. The factions along with the two girls were horrified by this. RageRevan's words meant that Issei was going to go after Lavinia, which made her pale. They hoped that this Issei won't hurt or kill Lavinia, and they feared what Issei plans to do with her. Alright, I will prepare the next viewing. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching and supporting us. See you in the next part.